to Emily in the back and Kelly also in the back that are bringing this program together. And I'm very grateful to both of you. Thank you for handling the Zoom and this. And you're more grateful because, yeah. Okay, so anyway, we'll let Terry introduce our speaker, Kate, and we'll get this show started.
Well, I'm really pleased to introduce Kate Long Hodges. If you haven't been to Holy Chul yet, for several of our members, please do that because she's a wonderful piece there. But Kate grew up in the wilds of Vermont, and she lives in the wilds of Arizona. So she is a traveler, a teacher, a multimedia artist, and a gallery owner as well. So she does wonderful work. And her present work is with her chainsaw, which is pretty cool. So she's going to come and talk about border issues, borderlands, and art. So please welcome Kate.
Thanks, Terry. And I just also want to thank Bobby for inviting me, both of you all, and just really great to get here on time today to just see the wonderful art that a lot of you are doing and see what the community is doing with their art. It's exciting. It's fun to see that. So can you guys, should we dim the lights? Is that helpful or is that going to make us sleepy? Maybe I'll try lifting this up because I'm a little taller. There we go, maybe. And yeah, try to maybe dim those lights and that way you can see the slides a little better. That's great. Thank you so much. That's great. So again, my name is Kate, and I live here well, right outside of Tucson, Arizona. My husband and I own some property in the Cerrito Mountains, which is 35 miles southwest of town, and we have a sculpture garden down there that he and I both run. So that's our gallery. But I did bring some cards here, so you guys can take a card if you'd like to learn more about our sculpture garden. But I'm going to start with a picture, a slide of the area where I grew up in Vermont, because as probably all of us feel, we are tied to our roots, where we grew up, where we came from. And that is very much a part of how my art is driven. Oopsie. Oh, I hit the wrong button. Buttons there. Okay, I did it. So this is all photos of Vermont that I took recently because I was there for the summer. I call myself a desert Vermonter because Vermont is in my blood. It's where I grew up. I grew up on a farm there in Vermont. And any of you have been to Vermont, it's different than any other state. And we always say that about our home state. It's like the best. But my younger brother is here. This is just about a week ago. He's putting out the apple bins. I grew up on an apple orchard. It's the second generation. My father ran the farm. My grandfather ran an apple orchard in Virginia. So this orchard is where I go in the summer. This is my mom when she was younger, planting out in the fields. This is what my upbringing was. This is my dad. He was a farmer, but he was also an actor. So he did a lot of theater in our small community town of Middlebury, Vermont. He was part of the community theater, just like all of you being part of a community art group. My dad was a part of a community theater and it was really good. And as a kid, I'd be like 6 years old, sitting behind stage, watching my dad. So these are all 3 pictures of my dad at different plays. He did, he actually studied studied theater, which is art, in New York. And I was born in New York City. And then shortly thereafter, he kind of came to a crossroad in his life where he was going to go on to study acting or just continue farming because he grew up on a farm. So he came back to the farm and then he raised us. So he still did his acting though, the whole time. He'd get off the tractor and go to play rehearsal, you know. And so it was a great upbringing. That's me as a child, helping my mom put dirt around the apple trees, all those little sticks behind it are apple trees. This is the apple orchard, just a shot. And then this is a painting that I just finished in Vermont This is a painting of celebrating the farmland of Vermont. So even though I live in Arizona and celebrate the Arizona desert tremendously, I love the desert, I also am really passionate about Vermont. I keep hitting that thing by accident. It's just something so simple that you can't even know how to do. There we go. I'm an artist, I'm not a tech person. Okay, so these are just like close-ups of that big mural. I got a job this summer in order to pay for my trips back to Vermont, help my elderly parents there. I have to pay for my way, so I find jobs, and I found a painting job. And I painted this big mural. These are close-ups. There's a 12-foot long painting that I painted on the side of a building in Stowe, Vermont. It's a restaurant, so if you ever go there, it's called the Edelweiss Mountain Cafe. And these are all details. But what it did for me, being able to be in Vermont for the summer, a dream, and work on my mural for this restaurant and paint. I used acrylic. This is acrylic on a really nice flat surface called MDO board. And it's very strong, and you can put a sealant on the surface of the MDO wood, the board, and it will last. I have another mural I did in Burlington, Vermont that's about the same size, about 15 feet high. It's a tall vertical mural. It's on panels, so it's portable. You can, screw it to the wall. And it lasts about 20 years because I went back and restored that other mural last summer. Got a grant to do that, which was great. And you put this UV protectant sealant. This is the landscape of Vermont. So back to a photograph that I recently took. But you can see how deeply inspired my subject matter is from the Vermont landscape. And it's just a joy to go to Vermont and live in that beautiful state for the summer. I live in a little round house in the woods that I built about 20 years ago. And I keep painting the outside of it to keep it standing so I can keep going back. But these are just interesting aspects to me of the mural, and working kind of with bold, big brushes. It's kind of fun to work with big brushes. The tractor is in there. Of course, there's so many Vermont farms and dairy farms and John Deere tractors. My husband insisted it be a John Deere tractor. That was one that his father had. My husband was also a farmer from Illinois. His parents were farmers, and he grew up on a farm. And both of us, the farms that we grew up on, mine in Vermont and his in Illinois, were basically our first art schools. Just, romping around on the land there. So this is inside the roundhouse in the woods where I live in Vermont. And there's 6 panels there that make up the 12-foot long mural that I was painting this summer. So you'll see when I show you my different artwork, I work in a lot of different mediums. I work in paint, I work in sculpture. I don't work in clay, actually. So I applaud all of you clay artists. But this is acrylic. I did some little practice paintings on the floor there. This is inside the yurt or the roundhouse where I live in the summer. I can give you a tour. My bed, my little living room, my studio, my stove is over there, and my kitchen sink. That's a tour. There's no electricity. I have a little composting toilet outside, and I live elegantly like in a cathedral. I'm very happy there. I have oil lamps. They work great. So this is my studio, and I could really spread out and get the 12-foot mural progress. So you can see where I started the mural there with big brush strokes in blue, developed the mural a little bit farther along. And this is the outside of the house. And as I said, I literally do paint the building every year to keep it waterproofed. If you put acrylic paint on anything, it makes it last. So this building is about 21 years old now, because I set it up so I would have a place to go in Vermont from Arizona and work on my art. Yeah, and you can see I painted a little owl on the side there because there's so many barred owls out there in the woods. So that's my studio. This is back here in Arizona. What translates from my Vermont world to Arizona is I love to paint murals. I love any opportunity I can to paint murals. Like so many of us, we just have a lot of different sides. I was, in listening to Virginia or Ginger talk about her artwork, your young scholarship student here. You know, I encourage her to not be afraid to have many different styles, if that's what you like, if that's a part of who you are. I think my husband and I are realizing that's a part of who we are. We have a lot of different styles. So this is the orchard, though, that route where I grew up, Vermont, very much a part of why I make art. This is a recent painting I did out in the orchard, just set up my easel, a little plein air painting, acrylic, wonderful bright colors from a painting company called Nova Paints and Crescita Eyes mural company out in San Francisco. I get a lot of my paints from them, acrylic paints. They're just really bright and vibrant. And that's another recent painting. I did these paintings with the scraps after I finished the 12-foot painting for the restaurant in Stowe. I did these smaller paintings of the apple orchard and just went out and got to be in it. And then this is another aspect of my work. This is some sculptural hats that I make. This is one sculptural hat I make out of burdock. There's some burrs that grow all over the United States, not so much here, but if you grew up in the Midwest, you might know because your dog would get them on your fur and they get stuck in the hair, and they're really sticky. They're what Velcro is invented from those. And there's some little shirts. Oh, it looks like it got cut off a little bit, but I think you can see on the next slide. So these are little sweaters that I call, and I make them out of the plant, just sticking the plant together. Actually, there's a little bit of cotton fabric underneath that shirt. And I think of them as fur. I think the material, the burdock, is just this really beautiful purple and greens and browns. And depending on when you pick them, they change colors. But I think for me, another interest in what I like to make with art is working with things from nature that we find and we collect. So I collect burdock in Vermont. I collect agave thorns in the desert. I collect Palo Verde branches, anything that respectfully can be gathered. And there's an earlier version. I've made several of these sweaters, burr fur. And for me, sharp and spiny things, when you put them together and layer them in artwork, they become very soft and elegant and the opposite of what they're originally make you feel. This is a burdock wedding dress hanging in the woods from a series called Marry Me Earth. I did a book. I got a little grant from the Vermont Arts Council to do a book called Marry Me Earth about our relationship, our union with the natural world. So these are some earlier pieces, but it's nice to have an opportunity to talk to you guys because it helps me as an artist reflect on, where I've been and where I'm going, where I am. So here you can see on this slide, the agave thorns on the right and left side of the box collage here. And then the little dress, sort of an elongated dress, just a sculptural idea that came to me as I was working, and then behind it the bird fur, the burdock plant, and then some little white mesquite thorns. I paint those thorns white on the side, and a little bit of things, scrap fabrics and scrap synthetic furs that sort of mimics the bird fur behind it. But that's a box collage, and that one's probably about square, about this square. And that's a close-up of it, so you can sort of see. Hope you guys can see these okay. Yeah, good. And I love the natural colors in the agave thorns. I don't coat them with anything. I just pick them at the right time. If you pick them at a stage of their decomposition, you can get them from decomposing too much, or they stay like that pretty well. Some other materials. This is another box collage that I did. All the pink color that you see, the pink fabric, I actually dye prickly pear fruit to make the color. And there's a little bit of milkweed in this. It's sort of like a snake skin, which is interesting. I did this dress sculpture before I moved to Arizona, but there were all these images that were Arizona-like, like a snake skin. There's some close-ups of it. So these are little tree roots that I painted white, just to give them a formality, I think, the white. And then the thorns along the side. I collect thorns from all over the world. I collect thorns from let's see, I've been to Honduras. I was working at an orphanage, teaching kids art down there, and collected thorns from Honduras. These thorns are from Vermont. I have some thorns from China. I didn't go there, but somebody sent me a box of thorns. And then I have some, of course, all the thorns from the Arizona desert. So, and that's milkweed, that white little, you have to kind of weave it in with a little pin. So this is a box collage that I'm very fond of. And then this is another one. This is actually a piece to a friend of mine who died quite young. Her name is Margaret Kilgallen. She was a artist that I went to Colorado College with, and then she went on to San Francisco to marry a graffiti artist, and two of them made some pretty amazing street art, but it's sort of an ode to her. She passed away from breast cancer in her 30s. She was one of my closest friends in college. So maybe, you know, the thorns, they do have kind of maybe a dark emotional side to them, but it started out for me when I weave the thorn through the white birch bark or the white lace or the fabric. For me, the thorn is a very beautiful, elegant object. And that's just how it speaks to me. It's just sort of that tapering and infinite kind of point that it comes to. I find that to be a really beautiful form. And the color, this dark purple, and then the white fabric of the dress is actually those old Victorian kit gloves, you know, the goat skin gloves, or there's deer hide ones too, but those old gloves that your grandmother gives you. My grandmother would give me old lace and old gloves and say, here, Kate, you can make art out of this now. So that's a detail, lots of embroidery thread and thorns and drawing and a little bit of ink, lace. It's very eclectic. To get it to kind of do what I want it to do, cutting into the glove and reshaping the glove into a dress. I think I used some deer hide in this one too. And this is the thorns from Tegucigalpa, from Honduras. These thorns I collected there, and then the little curly ones on the wings or on the arms of the dress are little Chinese herbs, you know. If you go to an herbalist, you might find some good herb thorns to use in your art. But for me, these little dresses are like, they become kind of like little warriors, you know, little facing your vulnerable self and charging into your vulnerable self with some courage. Okay, and so a lot of this translates into the work I do with schools and education with kids. So I have my personal work that I make art, but then I go into the schools and do workshops in schools. I used to teach art, certified to teach art K through 12. But then I told the kids when I was working full-time in this public school here in Tucson, I was like, you know what, you guys, I think it's always been my dream to start my own little mobile art school and to start this sculpture garden with my husband. And I don't have time to do all of them, but I'm going to keep coming into schools. Maybe I can come back and see you once a year and do a workshop. And the teachers are like, yeah, come back. So I come back over the years and do these just enrichment workshops. So we're making prickly pear fabric swatches here. So I mix the I pick the prickly pear fruit this time of year, a little earlier. Many of you might have made it yourselves also. I smush it up and I actually freeze it, and then I can take it out of the freezer and use it for drinks and lemonade and also for dye. I mix in a variety of things that I've been experimenting with to get the color. And this is what what the kids have been doing in the workshops. So we're making textile. I give them a little stick or even a little thorn that has the end cut off, and we make dots, put on some really nice quiet music, and here's their result. The kids make these beautiful leaf paintings. We collect leaves and then press them. These are magnolia leaves and from some of the parks. This is another one. We like to paint the leaves and make the prickly pear dye and come up with these different designs. We had one of these textile pieces go to Primavera, and the people who run the homeless shelter there asked if we wanted to come up for a tour and see it. So we went down there, and that was quite an interesting experience from the foothill schools down to Primavera in South Tucson. And here it is picking the prickly pear fruit out on our land in the Syria Mountains, which is a great place to pick. And then this is another enrichment workshop project in a high school. This is Pima Vocational High School, alternative high school for kids that were really struggling in other schools. A lot of them were being kicked out or various things. So these at-risk kids, we talked a lot about where their home, where their roots, their deepest, element of roots are. And for some of these kids, it was growing up in Nogales and right around the border and having some family members on the Mexican side of the border and some family members in Tucson. And so we did a mural that says, "We are the border, we are beautiful." That was the title that came to us. We did this sort of dot painting. And it's "We are the border, we are beautiful." The title of the mural is in Spanish and also in Tohono O'odham, because those were some of the languages we had of the students speaking in our workshops. So that's I think it's hanging in Grijalva's office now, which is good. And then this is another type of mural painting. I paint on beech trees in Vermont. And I have a harness, so I'm swinging in that. And I'm painting with chalk and charcoal. And my mom comes up into the woods from the farmhouse where she lives down the dirt road here. And she's like, "Oh my God, Kate, what are you doing up there? You're crazy, just like your father. You're just like your father in theater. He's just always doing crazy things." And I definitely have my dad in me. But these were really special experiences to climb the beech tree, because I was starting on a ladder and drawing on the surface of the tree, and I couldn't get high enough to get the whole sculptural feel of the painting to come through. So I have these photographs, what's left of this work, but it definitely drove me to climb other things and call that art. Here's a kind of a close-up of drawing with the charcoal. Drawing hands, because my hands are right in front of me and I can see them. And the light. So there's in the snow and going back to Vermont, you can see the roundhouse from the back there. And then this is climbing into art now in Arizona. So the harness is a bit bigger and stronger, and the drop is a bit farther than the tree. So I didn't even show these to my mom for a while. I just said, yeah, I'm climbing in my art. And I used a white parachute, a 1945 World War II parachute to wrap my body in. And then I started, I took this trapeze class with these high school students downtown, and I was like trying to learn how to do it. And then I got better at it, and then I got able to get comfortable in the harness. So there's a tree climbing harness and a rope, that I'm holding me, and a rock climbing friend lowered me down so I could get these images. And really what came out of it for me, well, that's like a chrysalis right there, like a butterfly unfurling. But for me, this experience was a learning experience about using art as a tool for connecting to something greater than ourselves through nature, through the natural world. And when I was up there, suspended with the wind blowing and the sky above me, and these, occasionally like a red-tailed hawk would come soar over my head, and I would see under its wings with the light shining through it. I felt so deeply connected to something greater than myself. And at the time that I was doing these, I wasn't married. I hadn't been in really any significant relationship. And I was thinking a lot about marriage and why I didn't have a boyfriend, or why I'm so doing my art and not, other things. And there must be something wrong with me. And then I started really thinking about, no, I'm feeling called to explore the union with the natural world. That's the marriage that I'm feeling here. And I want to honor that. So I'm wearing white. And this is another one, orbiting. This one I call orbiting. Last one I did call chrysalis. And then this one is in your spine, there are sails. So that was the title. And And these photographs are what came out of the experience. And then this is another type of work, another type of textile. I'll try to get a closer shot. So using the thorns, using the burrs, using the lace, using the curly thorns, and laying them into a sculptural textile. If you pick the burrs when they're green, they stay green. I just looked at this piece in a person's home that has it, and it's been 2 years, and the burrs are just starting to fade more to that goldeny. They will fade, but they turn that beautiful amber color. And the milkweed is the other material. Then I start mixing materials. So I have my Vermont materials with my desert Arizona materials. So those little white triangle shapes are the agave thorns that I paint white. Oh, and you can see them all. I line them all up to paint the agave thorns. I'm a landscape gardener for my work, for jobs too, in addition to making art. And so I cut a lot of the agave thorn tips and paint them white. So this is just outside my house where I'm painting them white. And there's a white one in with the prickly pear skeleton and the lace and these little thorns on the edges. Those are prickly pear thorns. And I don't think that, I guess I do have a larger one. That's the full final piece. And this one is hanging over in the acupuncturist's office of Julie. Yeah, isn't that great? Julie Armstrong. She's like, can you make me a piece of artwork for the office, for my new office? And I said, sure. It's going to have a lot of needles in it. She's like, perfect. She likes it. Okay, there's more of the thorns, painting them white. And then this is a performance piece earlier in graduate school where I made a floor. I'm really interested in the world of performance art and taking the world of nature, what we find in nature. These are after the 2003 forest fire up on Mount Lemmon. I was doing a series of small sort of performance art pieces, a little performance about the resilience of the forest fire. So the resilience of the woods, resilience of the forest, resilience that nature finds in the midst of trauma. So they're all painted black, charcoal black, or they're actually burned. Some of them are burned. So this is, I'm exploring a little bit of performance in the costumes here. And I'm working on a performance piece that I might work towards performing over at Tohono Chul if James and I can come up with a plan there. So I made the shoes, I made the hat, I made the jacket. And I'm just exploring what material looks like. And then drawing, drawing is something I love to do. These drawings have copper paint and pencil and gesso, ink, black ink, sepia ink. I call this figure Tree Woman because she's got a kind of a hat with all these roots coming out or branches coming out, and then she's rooted. Her robe kind of turns into this rooted form. And I usually start with finding a costume. Like I found this lampshade on the side of the road that I put on my head, and I took a photograph and I was like, oh, that's a perfect shape. I love that. And then my husband worked for an artist in New York for years, and she gave me some old clothing. So the name Ursula gave me all these robes, and I would put those on and take little self-timed photos for the purpose of having information that I could go back in and draw into, to make imaginary worlds in the drawing. So that's another imaginary world. So this is a close-up of that drawing. It's sort of like a drawing translating into painting, translating into stitch work. One of my wonderful retired ladies that I do garden work for, I landscape work for, she does really intricate embroidery and it's very organized. And then I show her my work and it's very unorganized, very unorganized. But that's how my brain works. I can put things together and it becomes music. It becomes a composition and it's just playing in your head. So these are imaginary worlds. These have some kestrel falcon hawks. So I look at images and then I go into my own way of interpreting them. Just trying to move this. Oh, let's see. There it goes. Detail. I put topo maps in here. There's white birch bark. There's, these are some drawings close up. So this is maybe hard to kind of see, but I would go up to Molino Canyon and bring my white fabric up there and then do these self-timed images because I was really interested in the figure in the landscape, but then drawing on top of the photographs. So that's what these are. Let's see, I'm trying to get it to move. Maybe it's stuck. Do you guys see a way to get it to move? Yeah, maybe I'll have you guys help me if I get stuck again. So these are now wood carvings. I do enjoy carving wood, and you know, it's interesting finding time to do these different things. You know, my husband and I work during the day. On the weekends, we run the sculpture garden, and then like on weekends, we try to sneak in time to do our artwork. So it's a busy life, but it's a good life. We like it. So I set some of the carvings on fire so that I could have them have this result. When you torch the wood carving, it gives these beautiful, beautiful black tones and warm, you know, brown and lovely colors. Because this is ponderosa pine. I got this wood from permission from a landowner up on Mount Lemon after the 2003 fire, and I have a lot of logs still that I'm carving one log at a time. And there are a lot of movement. To me, it's kind of like they're corridors. They're very fluid. It's very therapeutic to carve. My chainsaw is very small. It's a 12-inch chainsaw blade. My husband taught me how to use it very well. So it's like drawing. It's really like drawing with a chainsaw. And the grass, I really was pleased with this final location of where I put these sculptures. They're in this beautiful field of bare grass out in the Serrated Mountains, out in our sculpture garden amongst the other 40 or so different sculptures by different artists. My husband and I have a few of our own artwork in the sculpture garden, and these are some of mine, but there's others that are really neat too. Okay, I think I'm going the right way. So this is another sculpture. The wood is being ponderosa pine. It's very white underneath, making a nice contrast with the darker. And then of course it fades to a darker color as it lives outside. A lot of our sculptures just live outside and decompose over time. And we don't really mind that because it's all part of the process. The red on the side, that's a pigment, a ground rock that making paint, you can grind it up. It's fun with the kids in school to teach them about actually making paint, that paint really does come from the landscape, that all of our colors come from the landscape originally. And that's just a close-up, little grass starting to kind of grow off of that little part of the sculpture. That's a detail. This is my husband Ted and I. This is close to the last slide. That's Ted, that's myself. This was our Christmas card. We did a dress up for a Christmas card. But where it is located is out in our property in the Serrated Mountains where we have our sculpture garden. And we took all these pieces of sidewalk chunks from downtown Tucson that would otherwise have gone into the dump. And we brought a few pieces out at a time in both of our trucks, and then we terraced them and stacked them to build this patio. And you know, I'm showing you all these slides of the different kinds of things that my husband and I do, and you must be like, God, when do they have time to like do anything other? But we kind of piece it all together like a quilt, our lives, and it's tricky, but it's not, you know, as my mom says, well, you're just not necessarily following the capitalist enterprise way. Yeah. She said, yeah, you're not part of the enterprise. We just decided that for Ted and I, we're working to figure it out, you know, little by little. But I'll show you the next slide. This is thelandwithnoname.org. This is the name of our website and the name of our land. This is a nonprofit organization that Ted and I started. And I don't know if you can click on it. Do you guys know? And if not, it's really okay. But I brought these cards here. And I want to be aware of time. Yeah, we're doing pretty good. I'm going to wind it up here. But anyway, if you all go to this site, thelandwithnoname.org, and I have cards here if you'd like to check it out. This is a nonprofit that Ted and I have been working on, and it's a sculpture garden dedicated to bringing artists out to the land so they have a place to put their sculpture, because a lot of artists, when they make art, they don't have a place, especially sculpture, they hope to sell it. Sometimes you sell it, sometimes you don't, sitting in storage. So we're about 35 miles southwest of Tucson, and we run this sculpture garden as a place, and we just mostly operate right now through word of mouth, but we're developing our webpage. And it gives people a chance to come out and make art and have a place to put their art. And then that gives us a chance to give sculpture tours to the community. And we are still in Pima County, even though it feels like we're far out of the city. But we have different educational programs going on out there. We have residencies for artists to come do residencies now. We have a wonderful relationship with the Tohono O'odham community because we're close to Tohono O'odham land, to the nation. So we have basket making classes that happen out here at the land. We have sculpture tours. I think our next sculpture tour is October 15th. Because we are so busy, Ted and I, doing various things, we haven't really advertised our sculpture tours on the website, but we are finding once a month, just through word of mouth and handing out our cards, that we're getting enough people to come to the workshops and to the sculpture tours. I'm hoping to teach a landscape drawing class out there this winter. It's pretty nice in the winter out there, actually, and some painting classes and maybe a textile class. So if any of you are interested in any of that, just feel free to take a card here, and I'll leave them on the table. And in closing, I'm just going to read one last thing. You guys can ask questions if you want, but I had something I wrote that I felt called to read to you guys. So this will be what I finish my little talk here on. We are all bridgers if we choose to say what is important, constructive, built on solutions, generosity, and goodwill. This is what reciprocity is woven from. You reach out with a mindful, caring spirit, kindness, and that comes back to you. The art of art making, real art making, where one is doing it with the spirit of being totally mindful in the making, that's when these bridges naturally form. Art is not about making money. Sometimes it is, but it never has really been that way traditionally. It's about building relationships, building bridges, saying a prayer of gratitude. That's why artists tend to be such not so great business people. They are naturally better at being present with the beauty and grace of making. You hear artists say, or feel it yourself, the art feels like it is just flowing out of me, beyond my control, coming from a larger place, because it is. It's coming from you, within you, and that is also part of the larger place. Tapping into the larger place doesn't start with you just saying, okay, I'm going to tap in and control my making, going to make this. Nope. It starts with being present to all you feel around you, just loving making something with your hands. And then all the rest follows, the bigger picture, the metaphors, the natural bridges that form. You see this happening in nature, and in Native American art, and all ancient cultures all over the world. The making as a bridge, as a form of generosity, as a giving spirited action, as a natural prayer of thanks. Art was never about money. All ancient art reveals that, and we originally come from that. Thank you. Appreciate that.